that meditation. Now we come on to the main item in today's agenda. That is the talk by Venerable Maharagama Ananda Thero. Now, he is an external lecturer at the Pali and the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies of the University of California. And he's a scholar with a MA and a MPhil in Buddhist studies. However, he prefers to lead a somewhat quiet life as a recluse in a remote Aranya. But with all his profound knowledge of the Dhamma, he has made every attempt, whenever feasible, to share that knowledge and that information and his experience with Dhamma friends like you and I in different Buddhist forums as well as over the radio. So with that brief introduction, it's my pleasure now to invite Venerable Maharagama Ananda Thero to talk to us today on the benefits of listening to the Dhamma and the proper way as depicted on the Sutta Pitaka. Over to you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting for this Dhamma sermon. So, according to the traditional custom, let me start this Dhamma discussion with a verse Rish Bhagavad. Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Sadhamma Purirajas Sunantu Sadhamukadham Dhamma Savanakalo Ayam Badanta Dhamma Savanakalo Ayam Badanta Dhamma Savanakalo Ayam Badanta Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa Sokārvatānaṁ bhikkhave dhammānaṁ vacasā parichitānaṁ manasāna petthānaṁ vidyā suppati viddhānaṁ cattāro ānisansā pātipaṅkhāti. Dear Dhamma friends, as we all know, the topic for today's Dhamma discussion is none other than benefits of listening to Dhamma the proper way as depicted in Sutta Pitaka. Simply as that. So I thought of selecting this topic because at the inception of every Dhamma sermon, you might have heard Venerable bhikkhus are reiterating these points, but we hardly notice them. And sometimes at the end of the Dhamma sermons, they might repeat them, but still we fail to notice the correct way. Therefore, I thought of contribute all the listeners of this Dhamma sermon. So let us, throughout this Dhamma discussion, let us discuss about what are the obvious benefits of listening to Dhamma in the proper way. So, for this Dhamma friends, since we can't cover the entire Pali canon that comes under this topic, I selected one topic, one sutra, one discourse for this purpose. It is none other than a sutta called Sotānudatta Sutta. Sotānudatta means followed by the ear.
Later to be sent to the
This comes in the Ananda Nikaya, the numerical discourses of the Buddha. In its Chatukka Nipata, the pair of four, and again in the Maharagama, we find this sutta. Name is Sotanudaka Sutta. Remember the name, because one fine day you will be able to reread it again. In this sutta, Dhamma friends, addressing an assemblage of monks, Buddha says, bhikkhus, Sotanagatanam bhikkhave dhammanam, monks, for the person who has heard the Dhamma from the ear, who has followed the Dhamma from the ear, Sotanagatanam bhikkhave dhammanam, vachasa parichitana, who has recite them in words, manasanupekkitana, who has examined this Dhamma from his mind, ditthiya suppatividdhana, who has penetrated this Dhamma from the views. Such a person should expect four benefits, four obvious benefits. Starting that way, Dhamma friends, the Buddha goes on emphasizing these 4 points with the use of some parables, some stories, some examples, and the lives of the real facts of the real life. Listening to this discourse, one might think that this is confined to the celestial world or the Deva world. This is not for us. We should not think like that way, Dhamma friends. Listen to this carefully, and while listening, compare these points with your life, with our life, with this human world, whether you can apply the same to your life. That is very important. Therefore, Dhamma friends, since you all have gathered here to listen Dhamma, since I am here to preach some Dhamma, you all are obvious listeners. Therefore, you should know the benefits of listening to Dhamma the proper way. And also you should know how to listen to Dhamma the proper way. So you will cover these 2 points while listening to this discourse. So let me start. Starting that way, Dhamma friends, the Buddha says, bhikkhus, if a person has listened to Dhamma from the ear, sotanugatana, vachasa parichitana, if he has recited Dhamma using his words, manasanupekkitana, if he has examined this Dhamma from his mind, and finally, ditthiya suppatividdhana, if he has penetrated this Dhamma from the views, there are 4 benefits for him. This is the first one. What is the first one? The Buddha says, such a person who has mastered this art of listening to Dhamma, he must have heard a lot of Dhamma. We know that Dhamma can be divided into 9 according to Theravada. Sutta, Geya, Veyyakarana, Gatha, Udhana, Ityuttaka, Jataka, Abhuta Dhamma, Vedalta. These are the 9. Sutta means discourses. Geya means mixed verses and prose. Veyyakarana means expositions. Gatha means verses. Udana means inspired utterances. Ityuttaka means quotations. Jataka means birth stories. Vedala means questions and answers. Likewise, Dhamma friends, all this Dhamma can be divided into 9, which we call Navanga Sattu Sasana, the 9-fold message of the Buddha. So, such a bhikkhu who has listened to this Dhamma according to the way I just mentioned, using his ear well and uttering these Dhamma frequently, and examining this Dhamma from his mind, and finally penetrating this Dhamma from the views, he might die in a confused mind, maybe, since he is not enlightened, Buddha says. And he will be reborn in a celestial world. According to the Sutta, the Buddha is referring to the Tusita Divyaloka, Tusita heaven, where the happy ones dwell. Buddha says he may be reborn in a celestial being after his demise from this human plane. Then, as soon as he is reborn in that plane, Dhamma friends, the Buddha says, he will get to know how the happy ones, the happy devas, are reciting, talking on this Dhamma. And he will get the chance, he will get the opportunity to listen to this Dhamma. And the recollection may be sluggish, Buddha says. And after hearing the Dhamma, the memory, the remembrance, the memory comes to his mind very fast. Buddha says, it will occur to him, this is the Dhamma that I got the opportunity to hear when I was a human being. And this is the Dhamma which I lived according to the virtue. Then having heard that Dhamma, he recalls his past and he will retrospect according to his past lives, Buddha says, and quickly he comes to the distinction with the Dhamma. So this is the first benefit of listening to the Dhamma well, Dhamma friends. So we have left with another three. But at this juncture, I would like to focus your mind into a very particular, very important thing. To have this effect, Dhamma friends, mere listening won't do. What we tend to do is, a preacher is preaching, we all are listening, and some things goes to our mind and some things does not. But after this preaching, we are not retrospective, we are not examining these things that we have heard of. Sometimes we memorize only by words. That won't do. Can you remember the 4 steps? Sotanudatana. Listening to Dhamma from your ear. That is the first step. Okay, take this as a 4-step journey. First junction is listening to Dhamma from your ear, the human ear. This is very scientific and this is very psychological. Remember that. And second step, Sotanudatana is the first one. Vachasa Parichita. We are reciting them from your mouth, using your words. Why is it important? We are reciting the Dhamma again. In the first step, we hear the Dhamma and it goes to your mind. In the second step, we are putting this Dhamma through our words out. And when something is out of our body, it is very clear. The sight is very clear. So while uttering this Dhamma, while reciting this Dhamma, we get the opportunity to hear our own voice to our ears again. This is a very important point, even psychologically or philosophically. That is why some teachers tell their students to read aloud. Although you can read it silently, you have to read aloud. Vachasa Parichita. Then comes the third level, Manasanupekkita. You have to examine the words that you have heard from your own mouth, from your mind. This juncture is very important. Sometimes, Dhamma friends, we have seen in the Pitaka Pali Canon, a fraction of a second is more than enough for oneself to understand very crucial points of Dhamma. Maybe his enlightenment point. Who knows? Therefore, third level, examining the mind, examining with your mind, Manasanupekkita. Fourth comes penetrating point. This is very important. You have to penetrate this sansaric hurdle. The penetrating point is somewhat difficult, but very important. I'll come to this point later in this discussion. So for the time being, let us go to the second benefit. So we know the first benefit is once a bhikkhu is dead from this world and reborn in a celestial being, at the moment he hears people talking, the devas talking on Dhamma, he recollects his past life and he comes to the understanding. Second benefit is, Dhamma friends, Buddha says, okay, imagine bhikkhus, Buddha says, such a bhikkhu who has mastered the art of hearing the Dhamma in 4 ways I just mentioned, he will, after his demise from this world, he will be reborn in a celestial plane. But in this time, unlike the previous time, he will not get the chance or opportunity that others are discussing Dhamma in his whereabouts. But although there are no people discussing Dhamma in his close vicinity, Buddha says, there are monks who has psychic powers who dwell in human plane. They time to time they go to celestial planes and they preach Dhamma to the assemblies of gods. He will be able to hear such a sermon. We know, Dhamma friends, in the Pitaka Pali Canon, the Venerable Moggallana, Arahant Moggallana, and monks like Venerable Anuruddha and Venerable Sariputta, all are Arahants, they time to time, there are instances, they go to the heavenly planes and they preach Dhamma. So this bhikkhu, the deva, who is spontaneously born, would get the opportunity to hear such a Dhamma. Having heard that Dhamma friends, Buddha says, the arising of memory could be sluggish. The memory comes very slowly. But once the memory is there, Buddha says, he will soon gets into the distinction of understanding. He will soon realize the Dhamma. It will occur to him, this is the Dhamma that I heard when I was a human being. This is the Dhamma which I lived upon the spiritual life. Having thought like that, he will understand the Dhamma. At the juncture, the Buddha takes an example. It is like this bhikkhus. Buddha says, just imagine, there's a person who is well trained on the kettle drum, the sound of the kettle drum. He is a master of identifying the sound of the kettle drum. Suppose that such a person is walking along a highway. At one time, he hears the sound of a kettle drum from afar. What will happen? As soon as he heard that sound, there's no hesitation in his mind, and he will soon recognize this is exactly the sound of a kettle drum, because he has mastered the art before. In the same way, Dhamma friends, Buddha says, as soon as that bhikkhu hears, that deva hears, that celestial being hears the Dhamma from that monk who has the psychic powers preaching the Dhamma to the assembly of gods, soon he will realize the Dhamma. This is the second benefit of listening to Dhamma the proper way. So far we have discussed two. The Buddha goes to the third point, Dhamma friends. Okay, while listening to this, my sermon, you all have to compare whether is it possible to apply these techniques in human plane, human life. It's over to you. And in the third point, Dhamma friends, the Buddha says, imagine bhikkhus, there's a monk who masters the listening to Dhamma in 4 ways, as we mentioned. Sotanudathana, Manasanupekkitana, Vachara Parisita, and Ditya Suppatividdha, these 4 ways. After his death, he will be reborn in a celestial plane, a Tusita Deva world. And this time, he will not get the first chance. What is the first chance? The happy celestial beings are preaching Dhamma. No, it is not there. And one bhikkhu with psychic powers teaching the Dhamma to assembly of gods? No. Such a bhikkhu is not there. But at least, Buddha says, there are devas, there are celestial beings in Tusita world who are well heard of Dhamma. The one such young celestial deva would preach Dhamma to his gathering, to his fellow devas. This bhikkhu who is reborn in the celestial plane would get the opportunity to hear that Dhamma. As we mentioned before, the memory would come sluggishly, but the understanding is very fast. He will soon identify, he will soon recall, this is the Dhamma upon which I live the spiritual life in the human plane. And soon the understanding would come to him. Buddha takes another example, Dhamma friends. Can you remember the previous example? Buddha compared the voice of that bhikkhu who had psychic powers with the kettle drum. But at this juncture, Buddha compares the sound of this young deva who is preaching Dhamma to a conch shell. In Sinhala we call Haggediya, conch shell. Buddha says, suppose bhikkhus, there is a man who is a master of identifying the sound of conch, the conch shells, the sound of the Haggediya, in Sinhala we call. Suppose that man is going along the highway. Suddenly, he hears the sound of a conch. As soon as he hears this sound, he will soon realize, without any hesitation, this is exactly the sound of a conch shell. Because he had mastered the art before. Therefore, Dhamma friends, in the same way, if we were to understand the Dhamma, maybe in this life or in the other, we have to listen to the Dhamma the proper way, as Buddha wanted us to. So Buddha says, just like that bhikkhus, that monk, after hearing the words of that young deva, young celestial being, who was preaching Dhamma to this assembly of gods, he will soon realize the Dhamma in a fraction of a second. So this is the third benefit. Buddha reiterates that a good listener of Dhamma would get, maybe in this life or in the other. So Dhamma friends, we comes to the fourth point. Buddha says, bhikkhus, imagine that such a bhikkhu who had mastered the art of listening to Dhamma, listening by words through his ear and reciting that through his mouth, oratory, and again examining the same Dhamma from his mind, and after finally penetrating this Dhamma from his lips, he might die from his human plane and might be reborn in a celestial plane. But this time, Dhamma friends, look at this juncture. The Buddha says, this time he will not get the chance of hearing the celestial beings talking of Dhamma. No. This time he would not get the chance of hearing the Dhamma, where a bhikkhu with psychic powers would preach to the celestial beings. No, the second chance is not there. Even the third chance, a young deva would preach to the assembly of gods. No, he would not get that chance. But even if he failed the first three chances, he will not get the first three chances, Dhamma friends. Buddha says, for such a person who had listened to Dhamma the proper way, at least he would hear a deva who had spontaneously born in that deva world just a little before him. He would see that there's another deva who is just born. Then he would talk to that newly born deva, and he will tell him, sir, can you remember when we were humans? Can you remember how we listened to Dhamma? Can you remember the Dhamma that we used to listen together? Can you remember how we live the spiritual life upon that Dhamma, to the word of that Dhamma? Then soon that celestial being who is just born, he would recall, yes, Venerable, I can remember. Yes, friend, I can remember. I can remember how we listen to that Dhamma. I can remember it is that Dhamma that we live together, that we live the spiritual life together. Buddha says, Buddha takes an beautiful parable, friends. The Buddha's ability to relate parables are very wonderful. It's extremely wonderful. Buddha says, he gets a parable, he gets an example telling that bhikkhus imagine. There are two friends. When they were small, they used to live together and they used to play together. After some time, when they are old, maybe in a public place, they meet again after a long time. Then at the moment, they recognized each other. One would ask from the other, friend, can you remember when we were small, when we were schooling, we used to play together using mud, using sand, and using a lot of toys. Can you remember? Then the other person would reply, yes, friend, I can remember. I can still remember how we used to play together and what are the words we spoke and what are the songs we sang, likewise. In the same way, Dhamma friends, if you had mastered this art of hearing the Dhamma, Buddha says, at least you will get such opportunity. And after hearing the words of that Deva, who were spontaneously born just little before to you, the memory would come to you sluggishly, but still the understanding would go to the level of distinction, the Buddha says, and you will soon realize the Dhamma. This is the fourth benefit of listening to the Dhamma. Dhamma friends, if you can recall, what are the 4 points I have just told you? First is, it is nothing that when that bhikkhu is reborn in the celestial plane, he will get the opportunity to hear the Dhamma, others talking. First one. Secondly, if that fails, at least he will get the opportunity to hear the Dhamma, as a bhikkhu with psychic powers expounding the Dhamma to assemblage of gods. And if that fails, albeit that fails, for the third opportunity, you will get the opportunity to hear a young Deva, a young celestial being, preaching to the Dhamma to his peers. And even if that fails, Dhamma friends, Buddha says, at least you will get the opportunity with the help of a celestial being spontaneously born just little before you. He will come to you and ask from you, friend, can you remember when we were human beings, we used to talk this Dhamma this way, we used to live this spiritual life that way, can you remember? Then you would reply, yes, I can remember, and soon the understanding would come to you. Now, Dhamma friends, do you really think that these 4 benefits are confined to celestial plane? What do you think? I don't think so. Sometimes you might have confronted with such experiences. Forget about Dhamma. When you go to some places in this Sri Lanka, you might find them very familiar to you without any proper reason. When you go to a particular place for the first time, when you meet a total outsider for the first time, you might find him or her very familiar to you, very pleasant to you, without no proper reason. What is the reason? The reason itself is there. It is self-explanatory, my friends. Why? Because we have mastered the art of talking to people. So in the same way, if you had mastered the art of listening to Dhamma, Sotanudatana, the way the Buddha taught, the way the Buddha wanted us to do, it would never go in vain, even this life or in the other life. But don't you see, there is a particular order of developing the Dhamma. What is the first thing? We have to hear the Dhamma. We have to listen to Dhamma. The preacher could be a monk or a nun or a lay person or lay person, could be a child. Who knows? Irrespective of the preacher, you have to hear the Dhamma the proper way, without going to any extremes. At the first moment, don't think this is completely false. And at the first moment, don't think this is completely true. Come to the middle and pay your listening. Give your eye, give your ear in the middle, being in the middle. Listen, Sotanubhatanam, Dhammanam. Those are the very words of the Buddha. Then comes the second level. The Dhamma we have heard, recite. But do we really find it very familiar to us, Dhamma friends? Do we really recite Dhamma other than Pirit or Paritta? What do you think, Dhamma friends? Normally we know that we chant Pirit, the protections of the Buddha has taught us. But we rarely preach the other Dhamma. Have you heard very frequently that people reciting Paticcasamuppada? No, very rare. But Dhamma, friends, Buddha says you have to recite Dhamma. When you are alone, when you have free time, you can recite the Dhamma you have heard. It could be one stanza. It would do. The Buddha preached to some monks only one verse or two for their entire enlightenment. So who knows? The very word which would bring the enlightenment of us would hear at any given moment. Who knows? We don't know when and we don't know from where. Therefore, after listening to Dhamma, recite. After hearing your recitations, some might grow fonder of Dhamma and they might follow. That is another benefit. It will accrue merit for you. Therefore, reciting Dhamma is very important. When we are reciting, the word comes through our mouth and we are hearing our own words. This is the second one, reciting from the mouth. Then comes Manasanupekkita. Then the word that we have just uttered, take it again to the mind. First, it was in the mind. After hearing, we took it out in our words, and we are hearing our words for the third time, and we are now in the procedure of examining the Dhamma that we have heard from our own mouth vigilantly. We are scrutinizing this Dhamma, examining this Dhamma from our mind. Manasanupekkita is very important point, very important stage of understanding. Then comes the fourth stage. It is called Ditya Suppatividdha, penetrating. If we were to penetrate something, Dhamma friends, our mind should be very strong. We know that if we were to penetrate these walls, the person should be very strong. If some tool to penetrate a very hard rock, that tool should be very sharp and very strong. Therefore, in the first three stages, the Buddha instructs us, make your mind very sharp, very solid, and very strong. In the fourth stage, Dhamma friends, we are penetrating Ditya Suppatividdha. This is the actual moment where you will understand the Dhamma. Having heard this instruction, Dhamma friends, what do you think? What is the Dhamma that we should hear? What do you think? What is the exact point? What is the exact teaching of the Dhamma that we should understand, preached by the Buddha? As we know, it is none other than conditioned genesis, the theory of cause and effect, whatever the word that you use to describe that, it is nothing but paticca samuppada. Since we have another 10 minutes, let me dedicate this time to talk with you very important point. If you can mark that point in your mind, please go and read this sutta. In Digha Nikaya, we have a very special sutta called Mahanidhana Sutta. By the very sense of the word, the title itself is self-explanatory. What is that? Mahanidhana, the greatest treasure. Unlike any other discourse, be it a sutta or Abhidhamma or Vinaya or any other commentary or anything, we don't find this formula elsewhere. Only the sutta. What is this point, Dhamma friends? In this sutta, the Buddha describes what is the exact point that we are trapped in. Where is the problem of this samsara? In this discourse, Dhamma friends, while explaining the Paticca Samuppada in the ascending order, starting with Avidya Pacca Sankara and ending with Jati Dhara Bhyadi Marana Soka Parideva Dukkha Domana Supayasa, the Buddha comes the reverse order, the descending order. He comes this way. If there is birth, what is the reason for birth? What is the reason for birth? Then he comes inquiring the reverse order. When he comes to the point where he asks, what is the reason for Nama Rupa? What is the classical answer, my friends? What is the reason for Nama Rupa? According to Paticca Samuppada, it has to be Vijnana Pacca Nama Rupa. Answer should be Vijnana. Then the Buddha asks, what is the reason for Vijnana? When something is there, the Vijnana arises. What should be there to arise the Vijnana? Then the Buddha says, our classical answer should be Sankhara. But here Buddha says, it is again Namarupa. Why? Buddha says, the interconnection, the interdependence between Namarupa and Vijnana is a very vital point in this samsaric problem. Buddha says, there dwells a hidden vortex, a hidden whirlpool, samsara vata. Let me quote the Buddha's very words. He preaches to the Venerable Ananda. Etthavatha ko Ananda, jayetava, jiyetava, miyetava, uppajyetava. Etthavatha adivachana pato, etthavatha nirukti pato, etthavatha panyakti pato, etthavatha panyavacharang, etthavatha vattang vattati, ittattang panyapanaya, yadidhang namarupa saha vijnana. These are the Pali terms. Let me translate in English. Buddha says, to this extent, Jiyetava, one is decayed. To this extent, Ananda, one is born. To this extent, Ananda, one is decayed. To this extent, Ananda, one dies. To this extent, Ananda, he is reborn. Etthavatha adivachana pato. To this extent, Ananda, you can describe it with words. Etthavatha nirukti pato. Only to this extent, Ananda, you can give a definition to that. Etthavatha panyakti pato. Until to this extent, Ananda, only to this extent, Ananda, you can, it is a panyakti pato, you can attribute something. Etthavatha ko Ananda, etthavatha panyavacharang. Only to this end, Ananda, the wisdom can go down. Only to this extent, the wisdom can examine. Etthavatha vattang vattati. There are circles round the vortex of the sansara vatta, the whirlpool of sansara. For what? Ittattang panyapana. In order to attribute thisness, ittattang. The opposite is anyatattang. Ittattang, anyatattang. This way and the other way. So, ittattang panyapana. To make a being, yadidang, what are the two? Nama rupa saha vijnana. As far as nama rupa and vijnana is there, this sansara vatta, the whirlpool of sansara, the hidden vortex of sansara circles around. Dhamma friends, have you ever seen a whirlpool? Have you ever seen a whirlpool in water? Even for a fraction of a second. When you go home, if you fill your sink with water, when you just remove the knob at the bottom, you will see a small whirlpool. Haven't you? Yes, you have. Can you imagine the shape of that whirlpool? In a whirlpool, at the bottom, what we have? We have a dead end. It goes to the dead, right? So what is the nature of whirlpool? It attracts everything around, right? So if this whirlpool is made in an ocean or a river, although a skilled swimmer gets into that, can he swim? No. He will soon be absorbed into the bottom of the riverbed or the seabed. That is the end of him, right? And do you know how this whirlpool is made? When a stream of waters are flowing gently down the river, no problem is there. But among them, one stream of water thinks that he should go upstream. Then what would he do? He'd go upstream, and in this effort, he will only clash with a huge amount of water. Then what happens? He can't go downstream, no upstream. Now he turns back. Now it turns back and goes round and round, see, only to find the bottom. That is how whirlpool is made. Buddha takes this example. The interaction between consciousness and nama rupa is just like this whirlpool. I see. Okay. Okay, the Buddha says, in this, the shape of this whirlpool and the characteristics of this whirlpool is just the same as the problem of the samsara. In this samsara, we have tanha, we have craving. Nothing is enough for craving. Just like that, in the whirlpool, whatever you put into the whirlpool, it absorbs down and it will take to the bottom. It destroys everything. And it is between two things. There's interdependence between two things. Going up and going down. It can't even go up. It can't go down. That is why it is circling around. And Dhamma friends, just think. If this river is flowing very smoothly without any turbulence in the mid, can we point out one point and say, using our finger, that place and this place? No, because it is flowing, right? Once this whirlpool is there, once the whirlpool is made there, when it occurs there, can't we point that and tell others, in that place there's a whirlpool? We can. That is the exact words of the Buddha. Ittattang panyapana. Ittatta. When you understand that, I'm not here, you are not there, and we are not even in between, that is the end of the samsara life, the Buddha says. Dhamma friends, this sutta is very deep. Although we tend to think that only the Abhidhamma is deep, there are huge depths in this Sutta Pitaka, but all are not very popular. Why they are not popular? We are not listening to Dhamma the way the Buddha taught. We just listen to them Dhamma and we forget. We don't recite. We don't examine with the mind. We don't penetrate them with the views. If we follow this proper order, the Buddha said, you will find some more other very deep, very profound teachings of the Buddha. Just for example, I pointed out that, friends, therefore, if I were to give a flashback to what I discussed today, at the very inception of this Dhamma sermon, Dhamma discussion, I told you, we are going to talk about the benefits of listening to Dhamma. So until this moment, you have listened to Dhamma, right? Now you know how to listen to Dhamma and what are the benefits of listening to Dhamma. Although you are born again in a human plane or in any other celestial plane or whatever it is. And also, now we know these benefits are not confined to human celestial planes. These are also fair to human world also. And Dhamma friends, when you come across any Dhamma fact preached by the Buddha, use this way. What is the way? Listen very carefully. If you can master the language, it is also very important. Since we are not very familiar with the Pali, you have to take some effort to learn Pali. It is very important and very useful. And when we hear the Dhamma proper way, we have to recite. When you come across very important Dhamma friend, which is very familiar to you, recite them again and again, 2-3 times. It would do, and again. And examine the mind, examine the Dhamma in mind. For an instance, when you are walking along the road, take 2 points of Paticcasamuppada and think how this occurs owing to this, how this occurs dependent on this. And it will take some time, but it will soon give you some good understanding. So that is Buddha says at the last point, we will be able to penetrate that point with our views. Ditya Suppatividya. Those are the very words of the Buddha. So, Dhamma friends, since we are running out of time, I'm not taking more time than this. I think we were immersed in a fruitful dialogue, and you heard the Dhamma well, maybe online in a Zoom platform or in person. And let us reread this discourse. Not only this one, and also the Maharagama Sutta, the Buddha said, that is why I pointed out that Dhamma discourse also. Let us reread and read it and understand in our level best. With that, I will wind up my Dhamma discussion. May the Noble Triple Gem bless you.
Thank you, Bhante, for that very clear presentation, highlighting the importance, 4 important points of listening to the Dhamma properly. This forum is now open for discussion. Anybody in the Zoom audience who wants to make some comments or raise any questions, please raise your hand, unmute yourself, and direct your question, please. There's a question. There's one question. It's come on the chat box. Thank you, Bhante. Excellent talk. What are the 2 suttas, please? Also, could we need to eradicate out defilements and hence come?
Okay.
Ask about the 2
The
suttas.
2 suttas are The sutta I used as the topic of this discussion is Sotanudata Sutta. It is in the Anguttara Nikaya Chatukka Nipata Mahavagga. The English meaning is followed by the ear. It is mentioned in the Wisdom Publications book, translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi. You can find that sutta there in plain English with some commentarial notes also. And the second sutta is Mahanidhana Sutta. It is in the Digha Nikaya. You can easily find that in the Buddha Jayanti print and the Wisdom Publication, the long discourses of the Buddha, translated by the same Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. So these are the two suttas. I think I answered that question. Yeah.
And then comment. There's another comment. That question was raised by Samantha Jayatilaka to everyone. That was in the chat box. There's another comment that has come on the chat box, this time by Dr. Shane Halpe. Thank you, Bhante, for an enlightening discourse, especially regarding the benefits of listening to the Dhamma and the correct disposition to listen to the Dhamma. Just a comment. Any other questions from anybody? What about the physical? Yeah, Anoja. Right. Okay. Sorry. The problem with the technology, because I am not personally happy with this setup. So what to do? We'll have to compromise. And so I read back the two comments. First was the comments that had come from Samantha Jayatilaka. Thank you, Bhante. Excellent talk. What are the two suttas, please? Also, would we need to eradicate out the defilements and hence the karma? I suppose you heard the answer given by the Bhante. Next was a comment by Dr. Shane Alpe. Thank you, Bhante, for an enlightening discourse, especially regarding the benefits of listening to the Dhamma and the correct disposition to listen to the Dhamma. We have now got another comment coming from Jaika to everyone. If the Dhamma is expanded in two different languages, for example, in Pali and English, would it be understood differently? It's an interesting question. It is explained in two different languages.
The question is, if Dhamma is the Dhamma is expanded in two different languages. For an example, Pali and English, would it be understood differently? So the best answer for that question is, if one can learn the Pali the proper way, and if he himself can read the Pali, that is the best way. But when it comes to the English language, since English is not that rich language as Pali and Sinhala or any other language, since it has limited number of words and expressions, there is a particular room only to that extent only that English can describe Dhamma facts. Therefore, you will not get the 100% out of an English translation. But the best thing is, first you read the Pali with some difficulties. Although there are some difficulties, read the Pali. And secondly, you can read that in your mother tongue, maybe Sinhala or any other language. Or then third comes the English translation. That is the best way to go. I think if you are very familiar with English, you can still use as the second option. But best thing is first read in the Pali and then with your mother tongue. And third comes the any other second language. That is the best way. But still, I am telling you, the Pali gives the exact meaning. Because for an instance, if we were to say dukkha, there's no proper word for dukkha in any other language other than dukkha. English would tell you unsatisfactoriness, suffering, pain, grief, lamentation, torment, or whatever the word they use. They can only describe a part of the concept of dukkha, but not the entire thing. Dukkha is dukkha. For instance, there's no proper word in English called agarasma anagari, going from home to homelessness. You would say that in English, but it doesn't give you the 100% meaning of the two terms, agarasma anagari. It's a very complex term. Likewise, I just gave you two examples, Dhamma friends. Best thing is to learn Pali. Pali is a very beautiful language, very precious language. It is a very soothing effect to your ear. And if you master that, you will be able to learn more and more Dhamma in the exact nature. I think that would be.
Thank you, Bhante, for answering that question. The response has come from Jaika. I'm very grateful. And there's another question raised by Samantha. Is it possible to put the details of the first sutta in the chat, please? We can put it in the chat.
Yeah, actually, putting the details in the chat it will be difficult, but I think it is freely available in the internet. If you just type the word Sotanugata Sutta, or the English translation is followed by the year. I think several bhikkhus has translated. They have translated it into English in several times. So you can easily find that. And even if you can find the Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the wisdom publications, they have published the book. I think it's available, readily available in most of the libraries, translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi. You can find that in the book's name is the Numerical Discourses of the Buddha. Is the Anguttara Nikaya, Numerical Discourses of the Buddha. In its Chatukka Nipaka, Mahavagga, the great chapter, to find this sutta. I think that's the easiest way to find the details in that very nature.
Jaika has asked the name of the second sutta.
Yeah, second sutta is Mahanidana Sutta. It is in Digha Nikaya. It's very easy to find. The book is the Long Discourses of the Buddha, translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi. It's there, readily available in many bookshops, in some libraries, even in the university libraries is there. So you can easily find the English translation of the book.
Another question raised by Samantha. Does one need to eradicate all the anusaya pressure to cease rebirth so new karma is not produced? It's the cause of the rebirth.
Yes, the answer is very obvious. If we were to end the rebirth, the process of rebirth, that means end of samsara, the recurrent birth, even the kleshas or the defilement cannot be there even in a dormant stage, dormant form, we call anusaya. So all these anusaya kleshas also should be ceased to the end, to the utmost, if we were to end the rebirth or this sansaric journey. That is very obvious. But these kleshas, they are in different levels, in different forms. Even the anusayas, the dormant stage, should also be overcome if we were to reach the desired destination. That is nothing but the unconditionality, the nibbana. I think that would be.
So we should query on that, Bhante, because now we must be having lot of places collected in us because of this long samsaric journey. Now, how can we eliminate all these places? There may be countless numbers of places, because you are expected to, supposed to be carrying all these places from one birth to another. So is it a case of eradicating all these innumerable places, or is it a case of preventing the generation of new places completely and totally?
Okay, for this question, I think answer should be given in this way. we know that although there are innumerable of pleasures or defilements in our mind, they are surfaced from three roots. They are lobha, dvesha, and moha. Greed, hatred, and delusion. These are the roots of akusala, the roots of unskillful deeds. So Buddha says one should remove these three roots. To remove the first root, the greed, the best way is the generosity. Practice the generosity. So Buddha says first root of unskillful deed is should be eradicated little by little, and it is not that much fearful. So little by little, but not that dangerous. This is a characteristic of first unskillful root, the greed. Danda viragi. Danda viragi means should be eradicated little by little. When we practice generosity, our tanha or the craving is reduced little by little. It cannot be eradicated at once. That is the first one. Second is dvesha, dosa, that is hatred. Hatred is very dangerous, but can be eradicated very soon. That is its characteristic. It is first one is not that dangerous, but it takes time to eradicate. Second one is very dangerous, but still we are able to eradicate them very fast. Third comes the very important one. What is that? Lobha, dvesha, and moha, the ignorance. This is the worst one. Why? It should be eradicated little by little. Danda viragi, and it is very harmful. It is very dangerous because it itself makes the person's sansara itself. But having explained these three things, dumb friends, in the Paticcasamuppada, it starts with avidya paccaya sankara. Having heard that, one would think that the rebirth starts with avidya. The Buddha says avidya, as far as avidya and tanha is there, the sansaric life is there. And since the Paticcasamuppada starts with avidya, one would ask whether is there any reason for avidya also, or is it spontaneously there? No, even for avidya there is a reason. So Buddha says in another discourse, the reason for avidya is nothing but asava, the defilements which are there in our mind from a very early age, from a very long time. It's there. It's there, rotting there. That is why called asava. We have heard that in Ayurvedic medicine, there's a medicine called asava. The nature of asava is it is kept in a particular place for a long time, and it changes its form with the passage of time. That is called asava. Likewise, in our mind, all these kleshas are deposited, are hidden there for a long time, and still they are giving some effects then and there, very negative effects. That is why called asava. Therefore, Buddha says these asava, these defilements should be eradicated from insight meditation, which we call vipassana. Start with the samatha, the meditative appeasing, and we have to go next to the